The Bridge by Billy Joel, the first album I bought from this artist or by this artist after being introduced to this artist from a greatest hits compilation released about a year and a half earlier. Hey, it's Michael Douglas. Welcome back to Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And it's another album review, and I've had this album on rotation on Apple Music for about the past month or so, and I go back to it from time to time because it reminds me of a time around the time I was a freshman in college. So I started in the fall of '86. Billy Joel released his classic compilation, Greatest Hits Volume 1 and 2, a compilation of his, by then, 12 and a half to 13-year career in music. And a lot of times in my quest to really understand an artist, I was thankful when I was able to pick up a compilation by that artist so I could find out more about that artist musically. And I was glad I did. And buying The Bridge was the first time I had bought or committed to an artist by buying a full-length album. And of course I was aware of Billy Joel. I had bought some singles now and then from his prior albums, The Nylon Curtain and Glass Houses. This was in the early '80s when I was not only trying to save enough to buy a 45 RPM vinyl record, but also there's so much other things going on in life, and listening to the radio certainly was a part of it, but it wasn't a proposition, I think, to, like I said, commit to an artist if you're really interested in that artist. And I think not only buying an album, but a greatest hits album in order to find out more about that artist really was a complex process. I'm going into the weeds a lot here, but that was a rationale for my buying the first album by Billy Joel that I'd ever bought. And, you know, in a way, I was glad I did, because The Bridge is not a bad album. It's not his best album, but it represents a time in my life as I was getting into music and learning more about the artists I really like, that it was really exciting to find out about an artist and go deep, as it were, to a lot of singles that I wasn't hearing on the radio in order to form an opinion. And this was the last album Billy Joel had produced by his longtime collaborator, Phil Ramone. The production isn't very warm, but it's not really harsh either. And I mean that in the best possible way. I think his next album, 1989's Stormfront, was a little bit more in that regard. But this is an album that sounds very 80s, but I think it was a necessary part of Billy Joel's canon because it does represent kind of a transition point. I think the albums Nylon Curtain and, say, Glass Houses represent a time in Billy Joel's career where he was artistically and commercially really riding high. So how to really kind of stretch that on, as it were. And the track, I think, that really kind of demonstrates this was a song that he did release. It wasn't a top 10 hit, but a song that I consider one of the better songs of the album. This Is the Time, an excellent song about the beginning of a long-term relationship. But it wasn't played on a real piano. It was played kind of on an electric piano, which, you know, you can quibble. This is a piano man. And that was kind of a thing where, okay, what is Billy Joel trying to do here? But looking back on this album 40 years on, I understand that more. And I don't feel the same way I felt about this at that time when I was first listening to the album. The track's Running on Ice, and, you know, which again has kind of a sterile, cold production, pun not intended. Some people call it a ripoff of Spirits in the Material World by The Police, released about 5 years earlier. I really don't hear it, but I enjoy the song nonetheless. It wasn't a released song, and I don't think it's one of his stronger songs. I think it's probably one of the weaker songs on the album. Then, of course, we're getting into a couple of hits here. Modern Woman, which was released by Billy Joel, which he famously said he really despised. And this is probably one of these tracks where the record company wanted to put a previously released song on the album to try to get people to buy it who were, I guess, even more casual Billy Joel fans. I mean, I can see that from a commercial standpoint. You kind of have to do that. And he probably didn't like that very much because, it was probably a contractual kind of song he recorded for the label that was used in a movie. But this album, The Bridge, also has some really good moments here. One of those is the, I think, classic duet, Baby Grand, a bluesy type duet with Ray Charles about two grizzled music business veterans who've learned to trust only their pianos. So a song that showcases each man's strengths vocally and their piano playing prowess as well. So a great track there. And then the tracks Temptation and Code of Silence. Now the Temptation track has some great lyrics about wanting to lose oneself in one's partner and kind of a Tin Pan Alley type of melody, while the latter, Code of Silence, is a plea to talk about all the stuff that's been burning a hole in one's memory bank. Believe it or not, Cyndi Lauper got a co-writing credit on Code of Silence. And as the story goes, she was helping Billy Joel break through a episode of writer's block he was suffering. The song is very dramatic without being overdone, I think. And really boasts, I think, one of the most compelling melodies on the Bridge album. Again, that's an unreleased song, but I think you really should hear it. And the album's only 9 tracks, so it's a very digestible album. With respect to other artists, Steve Winwood also was featured on the use on a Hammond organ in the track, Getting Closer. And Billy Joel's extended middle finger to the music industry, people who basically kind of screwed him early in his career, is highlighted in this song. And finally, if you saw Moonlighting in the mid-'80s, Bruce Willis, who is now suffering with dementia, and Sybil Shepherd, Memphis, Tennessee native, you might recall an episode built around the song Big Man on Mulberry Street. Again, this is a track from The Bridge. And revisiting it, all these years later, it is kind of a big band version of certain Eagles songs. Lots of surface pleasures, including some acoustic bass. But, it's a good song, but you really don't get emotionally invested in this song. And one of the reasons is that Billy Joel sings in a higher register in this song, which makes him sound a little unnatural. So I don't know if this was a case of Billy Joel trying to match the arrangement of the song itself. I'm really not sure. It's worth a listen because of its inclusion in the TV show, I guess, if you really wanted to, if you were really curious about that, Big Man on Mulberry Street. So, despite this album's flaws, it is a solid listen, and I don't regret buying it to find out more about this artist when I had already committed to him buying his Greatest Hits 1 and 2 collection. So my review of Billy Joel's The Bridge, I've been a little bit lax on doing reviews of albums lately, and I'm going to try to incorporate more of those into the channel that are meatier than just talking about the album superficially on Dr. Pundit. And that reminds me, if you really like what you see here on the channel, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. And as the late great Barry White always used to say, let the music play. And I'll see you on the next episode.